Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular call meeting for Tuesday, August the 6th. Ms. Hilbert, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Kidder?
Present.
Councilwoman Butler? Present. Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Young?
Here.
And Mayor Crocker?
Here.
And Councilman Lofgren will not be joining us this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. If you would please stand and join me for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Again, welcome, everyone. We have a full agenda for the evening, and we will start with announcements and reminders. Mr. Garza,
Good
how
evening.
are you?
I'm great, thank you. Is this on? It is. All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. A few announcements and reminders this evening. On behalf of the mayor, I'd like to remind the public that applications for the 2024-2025 Mayor's Youth Council will close on Saturday, August 31st. The Mayor's Youth Council is open to high school juniors and seniors who reside in Victoria County. For more details, go to victoriatx.gov/youth council or contact Special Projects Manager Keisha Smith at 361-485-3030. And this is her cell phone number. No, I'm just kidding. On behalf of municipal court, applications for the City of Victoria's Child Safety Grants for 2024-2025 will close Friday, August 16th at 5 p.m. Information workshops for potential applicants will be held in the municipal court chambers on Wednesday, August 7th and 14th, located here at 107 West Juan Lynn Street. For more details, go to victoriatx.gov/child safety program or contact Municipal Court Administrator Tiffany Toda at 361-485-3050. On behalf of the Parks Department, and you might have seen this with our newsletter that went out today and a press release that we put out today as well, that the replacement of the playground equipment at Brownson Park has begun. And this park will remain open with rotating closures during construction. The project is expected to be fully completed by September 30th, and we're certainly very excited about a new playground that's going into this park. We're also doing some other enhancements to the basketball courts, replacing the fence, and overall really trying to improve this neighborhood park, which I believe is our oldest neighborhood park. And so we're very excited about that. And with that, that concludes the announcements that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. There are a couple of items on B2, public and employee recognitions, and the first is a National Farmers Market Week proclamation. Ms. Hilbert, can you please help me with that?
Yes, sir. Whereas Victoria farmers and ranchers provide citizens with access to healthful, locally and regionally produced foods through farmers markets, which are expanding and evolving to accommodate the demand of a diverse array of agricultural products. And whereas farmers markets and other agricultural direct marketing outlets provide infrastructure to assist in the distribution of farm and value-added products, thereby contributing approximately $9 billion each year to the U.S. economy. And whereas farmers markets are as significant outlets by which small to medium and new and beginning and veteran agricultural producers market agricultural products, generating revenue that supports and the sustainability of family farms and the revitalization of rural communities nationwide. And whereas the Victoria City Council recognizes the importance of expanding agricultural marketing opportunities that assist with encourage the next generation of farmers and ranchers, generate farm income to help stimulate business development and job creation, and build community connections that through rural and urban linkages. And whereas the Victoria Farmers Market has been in operation for 35 years, including 8 as the official program of the Food Bank of the Golden Crescent, prompting unprecedented growth for the market, as well as increased access to fresh, locally grown and produced foods for people in the greater Victoria area. Whereas the Victoria Farmers Market supports more than 80 local farms, food producers, and small businesses from throughout South Texas, providing a year-round opportunity for those businesses to sell their wares to the public. Now, therefore, I, Dwayne Crocker, Mayor of the City of Victoria, do hereby proclaim the week of August 4th through 10th, 2024 as Victoria Farmers Market Week in Victoria, Texas, to further awareness of farmers markets' contributions to our lives in conjunction with the observance of National Farmers Market Week. I call upon Victoria citizens to celebrate farmers markets with appropriate observance and activities.
Thank you. As the president and CEO of the Food Bank, I have the privilege of being here tonight because the farmers market manager has COVID. So keep her in your prayers and thoughts. And her assistant also has COVID. They do a tremendous job of working with our farmers and our vendors there. If you've not visited on Wednesday or Saturday, I urge you to go. It's a great opportunity to support these local individuals that make a living doing what they're doing. So please join us, and thank you again. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the community's support.
Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all's hard work on this. Item 2B then would be Keep Victoria Beautiful Award for August. Ms. Euchre. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Before we honor our business this month, I wanted to remind everyone we have a fall sweep cleanup coming up, believe it or not. I know it doesn't feel like fall, but just imagine it. September 21st, we'll be doing our big roadway cleanup all over Victoria. We're looking for groups, individuals, families, teams. And you can sign up at keepvictoriabeautiful.org. You can also call 485-3230 for more information. And we always have a great time. We feed everybody. We give out awards for most spirited, most unusual item, most trash picked up. So I want to invite the community out and to get a team or just show up. We'd love to have you. And now I want to bring up Donald Jerkovsky. He's one of our KVB board members to introduce our winner.
Thank you, Kristen. Good evening. How are y'all doing this evening?
Good evening.
This evening, it's an honor for Keep Victoria Beautiful to present its August monthly beautification award, the Keep Victoria Beautiful Business Beautification Award. This month, it goes to the Ron Brown Company, located at 2505 North of Vero. The Ron Brown Company is owned and operated by Mr. Lee Swearingen, and Ron Brown has been in Victoria since 1953, and they've been at their current location since 1975, which is located at 2505 North of Vero. It's beautiful. How they have the plants out front. Their flower beds just keep it very beautiful. And when we was meeting with them, we asked, who keeps up with this? And they said it's a lady by the name of Geraldine Nolan. And this evening, I would like to ask Mr. Lee Swearingen and Miss Nolan to step up front, and I'd like to present them the award.
We've been at our current location for 50 years now, this month. And this is the first time we've got it, so we're pretty excited about it. But we do appreciate it, and we've worked hard. I think one of the big things we've done that kind of goes unnoticed is we have about 6 oak trees on the property that are probably close to 100 years old or older that have been there for at least that long. And we've maintained those and kept the bugs out and the moss out and what have you for all these years. So we do appreciate it and look forward to maybe getting it again someday. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. Very well deserved. Mr. Garza, are there any other public and employee recognitions?
I do have a couple of additional employee recognitions.
Okay.
I do want to ask Greg Rodriguez and Kevin Post to please just at minimum stand up. Greg is our operations and maintenance manager for our utility division, and Kevin is our surface water treatment plant manager. And they both received the certified water professional certificates from the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Services. The TEAC Certified Water Professional Recognition Program recognizes individual achievement and training expertise within the water and wastewater industry. The program awards the CWP designation to senior industry professionals who complete over 250 hours of specialized training through TEACs. And so as always, Greg, Kevin, thank you so much for your dedication and congratulations on your certification. And speaking of hundreds of hours of credit hours, our city attorney, Allison Lacey, recently received the Merit Certification in Municipal Law from the Texas City Attorneys Association. Also a very distinguished certification amongst her profession that also accounts for a lot of continuing education, right? And so Allison, congratulations on that. Thank you for your commitment to professional development as well.
Thank you very much.
I didn't make you stand.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. Those are the two that I have. I believe you have some as well, Mayor, that you'd like.
I do. I have a couple of items that I'll just roll into items from council and start off with a congratulations to the Victoria Northeast Senior League team for their achievement in reaching the Senior League World Series. My understanding is that this is the first time a team from Victoria at any level has reached a World Series since 1994. So obviously, this is a big deal. And in celebration of this team and their facilities, or in their families rather, we encourage the public and their to attend a welcome home parade that I understand is going to be on Sunday, August 11th at 11 a.m. Do we know the location on that?
It's starting at the library.
Starts at the library. Okay, thank you. And there will be additional information available that can be found on the Victoria Northeast Little League Facebook page. So hopefully everybody will turn out and congratulate those young men and their coaches for a very, very good season, obviously. So, and speaking of that, sticking with the theme of baseball, which is near and dear to my heart, also congratulations to the Victoria Generals. They won the 2024 Texas Collegiate League Baseball Championship in a 8-2 win over the Acadia Cane Cutters. And the Generals were the Texas Collegiate League's best team during the regular season and also set a franchise record going 34-12 for the season. So obviously, congratulations in order for both of those squads on a very successful season. And hopefully, citizens will appreciate that and tell them congratulations when they see them.
Absolutely.
Are there any other items from council?
None here.
Okay. Then we will move on to item B4, which is citizens communication. I have a few cards here, and we'll start with Kenny Jones. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you ahead of time before it's announced that, did I do something wrong?
Time's up.
We went for 3 minutes and 3 seconds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm used to that. Sunday, when I start preaching, people start leaving, so. So I just want to thank the city, especially Zach and Celeste, for the work they do on behalf of the CDBG Grant Fund. It's great to receive this fund that we can continue doing what we do. It's always a pleasure to deal with the office of the CDBG folks. Celeste, and there's another new fella, I can't recall his name, but they do a great job, and we just appreciate that. First, let me say thank you, Mayor and Council, for receiving me. The beep got me off track there. I want to also speak to a matter that, you know, folks drive by our place and make judgments without knowing the story behind folks' lives or situations. We have some folks that have decided that their new home is the bus stop out in front of our place. It's not that we haven't offered assistance to these folks, and some of them have been in and out of our shelter, but some folks choose that life so that they don't have to obey rules or follow instructions. And although it breaks our heart, there's nothing we can do about that. We encourage them Now, sometimes I use the tough love method, which not everybody likes, but when you get to the point to where you know they're not going to make the right decision, sometimes you have to be tough, and that has repercussions. When you're driving by and you see folks out in front of our place, that doesn't mean we won't let them in. That means they've chosen not to come in. That's about the extent of it. And we're working hard. We have a shelter that, and I'm going to probably, I know the fire chief is here, so I'm probably going to get in trouble, but we have an 18-bed shelter where we have 22 men right now. We have rollaways in our hallway, and I will tell you, out of those 22 men, my social service director, Rick Villa, behind me, and his team have worked extremely hard. 80 to 85% of those men that came in homeless and jobless and some hopeless, 80% of those men now have employment. Some have bought new vehicles, so some have already transitioned out into housing. That's what we're really about. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Michael Vanderwall. Good evening, welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Michael Vondro. I live at 2204 East North Street, and they're doing some plumbing repairs, and they're working like at a snail's pace, and it looks like someone shot 12 HIMARS missiles in the trailer park. And I couldn't even get to work because they had it fenced in. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was like sealed in. I felt like I was an inmate or something, like at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I don't think that's a good idea. They seal you in and you can't get your car out. And just now, Monday, I got my car out so I could get to work. And, they help, as long as Rick's there, telling them what to do. But if Rick's not there telling them what to do, they usually don't do anything. And there's no plan or what's going on, or there's no communication from management. Management didn't tell us anything. And, it's just chaos, In May, the SWAT team came and made an arrest, and they did get a grand jury indictment, and, a married couple is going to court over that. And, the police have been given security, which I do appreciate, but I want to know what's going on. I have no clue what's going on. And, if they got 3 plumbers trying to fix 15 trailer parks all around the state of Texas, that's not cutting it, And they could get Yannick Plumbing out of Victoria. I don't know why they won't use local plumbers. They just use their own. But there's plenty of certified plumbers that do good work in Victoria, and I don't know how long it's going to be, but I don't know if you've ever been by 2204 East North Street at the Oaks, but I would recommend stay away from it. It's a mess, and it seems like they don't really have much of an intention of getting it fixed. They're working like at a snail's pace, and I do appreciate, Adam West, Assistant City Attorney, overseeing all this, so it gets done. But I don't know why they can't make progress or anything, or equipment issues, but it's real dangerous there, and I wish someone could give communication. And Meals on Wheels couldn't even come to give the food to the senior citizens on Monday because they had it all fenced up and they couldn't get the food and stuff. But thanks, and have a good evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Vondero. And the last card I have is Mr. Harley Fisk. Good evening, Mr. Fisk.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and any interested citizens listening in. Recently, I heard a disturbing statistic, right, which I have not independently verified, so I don't know if it's true or not. But I heard that up to 70% of the children in Victoria who are going into preschool are not really ready for preschool. One of the things that we can do is the Victoria Public Library, of which I am a member of the Friends of, has a program called 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. All right, simple program. There's no cost to anybody that signs up, and it just encourages reading so that the kids are a little bit better prepared for school when they get there. They know how to hold a book. They may have they've got better language skills. So it's a great program. Again, it's free. And yes, I have probably signed up more people than anybody else for that program. But it's just something that I've taken on personally as part of the Friends of the Library. So I strongly encourage that. One of the best places to buy books for kids is the library book sale. And the next sale starts on September 15th. That's a Sunday for members only from 12 to 2. And then it's during regular library hours, Monday through Friday. And then we're open for a short time on the book bag program on Saturday, right? And as part of that, and people should not make generalizations about or stereotyping people, but I would like to present something to our police chief. Chief, would you come up here for? Right. No, I'm not trying to bribe him because this was part of my book bag thing, but right, so not that I want to stereotype police officers.
You look nervous, Chief.
And many people who were in favor of that declined to be here tonight because they like their jobs.
Should I share?
You should share.
It says the cookbook.
Oh, nice.
Recipes to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. All right, that will close out citizens' communication then, and we will move on to section C, which is items with public hearings.
Item C1 is a resolution approving and adopting the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG 2024-2025 one-year action plan, and authorizing the city manager to submit all required documentation for fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG program to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD.
Good evening, Council. So this is really just a recap of the funding recommendations that we presented in June. As you know, we asked for those funding recommendations to make sure that we're all on the same page of how we're going to propose that the Community Development Block Grant funds are programmed for the upcoming year, because it is a lot of work to write the annual action plan. And so that is what Zach and Celeste has been working on all summer to make sure that it's ready for HUD. So just to plug, we are celebrating 50 years of Community Development Block Grant. And hopefully we have 50 more years to help those in our community. So it is an annual grant from HUD, and it is purpose is to reduce poverty and its effects and develop viable communities by providing quality housing, creating a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities. It's a lot of work every year to create that annual action plan, and that annual action plan, of course, ties into our 5-year plans. So we started back in March with a pre-application workshop. Applications were open for the month of April, and they were submitted in May, where we formulated those funding recommendations, brought the recommendations to y'all on the June 5th or June 4th council meeting. Tonight is the public hearing. And request approval of the action plan, and then we will submit it to HUD. So just as a reminder, this grant does have to help all individuals that meet these low to moderate income limits. And so this is what it looks like. Our median family income at 100% is $88,000. So your household has to be under the 80% as it's listed on this table, and it's determined by household size. The other qualification is in CDBG eligible areas, which I don't think I showed in June. This is actually in response to your question about Councilwoman Butler about using the funds to help pay for fire equipment. Because the funds have to be expended to help only those that are low to moderate income individuals. If we were to, say, buy a fire truck using CDBG funds, that fire truck would only be able to respond to the areas in yellow, or if we were going outside of the areas in yellow, we would have to capture income data on everybody that it was helping. And so we can do things by the grant, but sometimes the paperwork is so onerous that we run our program the way we run it because the grant does pay for just one staff member. And so all the work that Celeste does or that I do is just extra on top of the grant. So these are our eligible areas, and what they are is census tracts where over 50% of the folks living in the census tract are below that income threshold of the 80%. So this is our 2024 funding, which corresponds with fiscal year 25. That can sometimes be a confusion point. But we did receive $551,333. Our administration is 20% of that at $110,000. And as I said, this does pay for just one staff member. We are proposing $25,000 in demolition funds, $95,559.40 for parks projects, which is mainly lighting and sidewalks in those parks listed. And then we will be granting out $238,007 to different nonprofits for public facilities, and then $82,500 in different public service activities. And public service activities are capped at 15%, and those are programs that go and help an individual. For example, utility assistance to an individual householder, Meals on Wheels to an individual, and so that's why those activities are defined separately by HUD, and that's why they're capped at 15%, and they're pretty onerous on the paperwork to certify those folks to be eligible. So this is our public facility recommended funding. A roof restoration for Boys and Girls Club, outdoor security for a new foster home type of facility, Home of Joseph Foundation, the laundry facility room for Hospice of South Texas. That does not include the actual washer and dryers. It's just setting up the bones of the room because we don't pay for assets or equipment. Meals on Wheels of South Texas, parking lot and exterior lighting, a day center and industrial kitchen and laundry facility for Midcoast Family Services, and then a kitchen expansion for Salvation Army. And again, those kitchen projects don't include any equipment. And that totals $238,000. So these are our public service activities that, again, are capped at 15%. You will see we get large requests, and there's a lot of requests, and we're only allowed to expend 15% of the grant. So the more requests we have, we try and fund everybody. But you can see the recommended funding are much less than the requests because the need is just so great. So we are proposing to fund Billy T. Catan's Behavioral Interventions Program, Boys and Girls Club After School and Summer Camp Program, CAC's Rental Assistance, Food Bank of the Golden Crescent Kids on Weekend Meal Program. Golden Crescent CASA is for volunteer training needs. Gulf Bend Center, their wellness community, helps pay for staff member. Then for Meals on Wheels, home delivered meals, Our Lady of Victory Conference of St. Vincent de Paul Society Utility Assistance Program. The Salvation Army has a community transit and taxi assistance program they're starting up. And then the United Way of Crossroads, at the Crossroads, has a community connection project, which really helps. It's sort of like social workers helping folks find and connect with all the resources out there. And then VISD's Kids Connection is back. And that hits our 15% max at $82,500. So our public comment period was open this last month. Tonight is the last opportunity for folks to give us a public comment at the public hearing, and then we will submit before August 16th. And with that, I would ask that council approve the funding for the annual action plan for CDBG.
Thank you, Ms. Fulgham. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, then with that, I will open the public hearing on item C1. If anyone wishes to speak to this item, please make your way forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain any motions with respect to item C1.
I move we adopt.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item C1 passes. Then moving on then to our next public hearing, item C2.
Item C2 is a resolution hearing an appeal of the Building and Standards Commission's demolition order for 3010 East Rio Grande.
Again. So the property owner did appeal this, Mr. Harrington did appeal the order that the Building Standards Commission gave to demolish this structure. As you can see, it is an accessory structure on a vacant lot. There was at one time a manufactured home that has since been demolished, and that now the accessory structure is in substandard condition. Mr. Harrington is quite elderly, and he was in our office earlier. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make the meeting due to some health issues and limitations. But he does, of course, request that the order be reversed and he be able to repair. And we do believe he has the means, but then on the flip side, to what end? And so staff does have a hard time recommending that the order be reversed because it is an accessory structure without a primary structure on this lot. So you can see there's evidence of vagrant activity with the doors having been pried open and falling off the hinges. And then the roof is severely deteriorating. And of course, once a building starts to have water damage, it kind of exacerbates all the rest of the damage. So the leaking roof has led to it starting to deteriorate at the foundation level.
So, Ms. Fulgham, do I understand then in your meeting with this gentleman today that he did express a intent to repair and you believe that he does have the means to do so?
Yes.
Did y'all discuss plans, timeframes, anything of that nature? Could you share that with us?
Yes, so he is proposing to hire a contractor. So if the order were to be reversed, we would want to give 30 days.
Okay. And this is an accessory structure, I understand that, but if this were repaired, I'm assuming that it would make that property more desirable for someone to put a mobile home there in the future because it would have that accessory structure in place?
I mean, those are $1 million questions because it is in a place where it may provide limitations to, double wide type manufactured homes, but a site-built home could easily be built around it, or a single wide could easily fit on the lot. It is a 66-foot wide lot, so we did look at the placement to see how easy it would be to, make it developable around this. So yes, it could be developed, but as far as finding the right person that wants to do it,
Got it.
those are a lot of what ifs, so it's really hard for us to
And
answer
again,
that.
just so I'm clear, did y'all nail down any specific timeframes that it would take, that he would be able to get this repaired?
It was 30 days. 30 to 45 days, and we pressed at 30.
Okay. Any other questions then?
I do. So if you give him 30 days and at the end of 30 days, no appreciable progress has been made, do you still have the ability to go in and destroy the structure, or do you have to start the whole process over again?
It depends on how the resolution is written or worded, but if you just grant him 30 days and at the 30 days it's doesn't receive a new certificate of occupancy, then we should be able to go and tear it down. But it sort of depends on what your motion or action is.
So if I can jump in, just to explain to the new council members, whenever we have these appeals from the Building Standards Commission up to City Council, we have to choose one or the other to write the resolution to attach it to the agenda. So we will generally write it that city council decides to deny the appeal and uphold the finding of Building and Standards Commission. That does not mean that y'all are required to vote that way. You can, as Julie explained, you can uphold it but give them 30 days to make the repairs to the structure. You can decide to deny the Building and Standard Commission's determination, and that will send it back, basically, the whole case to the very beginning. So there are options. We just have to pick one way to write it for the agenda purposes.
Any other questions?
No, I see this, it's not a large structure. If he has the means to do this and it's his property and chooses to, then, I mean, I look at that as his decision. But as long as it comes up to the standards, I don't have any problem giving him, I don't know what's a reasonable amount of time, 30 days or 60 days. But if it's not done to that, then I would recommend that we maintain demolition. But I don't know what a proper time frame is in that regard.
Okay, so let's do this.
Nothing prolonged, I would say that.
Let's, let me open the public hearing, get that, and then we can discuss on the dais following that, just to see if there's any other input, if y'all are okay with that. So with that, then let me open the public hearing for item C2. If there's anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. Seeing none, then I will close the public hearing. Certainly, Councilman Young, I agree, you know, from the standpoint that if the gentleman has the intent and the means, a 30, 45-day window would seem appropriate. And to Ms. Lacy's point, I think it's up to us that we can say that if it's not repaired, certificate of occupancy within a 45-day period, then the demolition order will proceed forward. I mean, I think that's our prerogative to do so. And Ms. Butler, you wanted to say something?
I was going to ask, are there extenuating circumstances? Because I agree with Dr. Young.
Can you speak into the microphone,
Yeah,
please?
you might pull your mic over. There you
I was just going to ask if there's language, Ms. Lacy, regarding extenuating circumstances. So agreeing with Dr. Young, if he has the means and he wants to, he's taken action to bring this forward and ask for the appeal. There's a letter in here that's clearly stating that he's hired individuals, he's just waiting for permission to move forward. If there were extenuating circumstances, say tropical storm, health issues, is that something that could be written into there? Because I hate to say, okay, you have 30 days, and then there be a natural disaster or something that prevents that timeline from occurring.
So you're saying basically give him, say, for example, 45 days, but with language in the resolution that except for something like that, like a force majeure clause?
Yes.
Kind of situation. It's never been done before, but y'all can certainly, if you would like us to add language like that, we can look into doing that. Or you could just consider giving an extra amount of time in case something like that was to happen, say 90 days. That would get us out of hurricane season.
Ms. Lacy, if we were to give 45 days and there were something like a tropical storm or, you know, we're prognosticating here, who knows, and the gentleman, because of that, was not able to complete the project, would he have the ability to come back to us and say, would you consider extending? I mean, is that even a possibility? I don't know what that procedure looks like, I guess is my question.
Procedurally, that's not really, once you make the decision, there's no second appeal process for him to come back and ask for that. I think, and Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, even if, say, you gave him 45 days, and then at that point, it takes a period of time before, it doesn't happen immediately, so he would.
Storm or a big event like that, this, our office priorities would shift drastically, and we wouldn't touch this for probably another 6 months to a year if it were to have actually withstood a tropical storm or hurricane, because it's a possibility that this structure won't.
Another option would simply be for y'all to table the item until a certain time in the future and then bring it back and see if he's made the progress, if you don't want to necessarily make the decision right now. To what that timeline needs to look like.
I noticed that his appeal letter was dated July 24th, And he said that he had hired people. And I think in the presentation, there was a picture taken today or yesterday, and it didn't look like anything had happened, and that's been 20 days
We
since.
do caution and tell, once an order has been issued, we will not issue a permit, and we tell them not to start any work in case the order gets upheld and they've started, they spent money after, good money after bad.
So Ms. Lacy, if we
That's
were
helpful.
if we were to table this today, say till the first meeting in September, we can see what kind of progress has been made in that 30-day period and then take the item back up again. That's a possibility.
That is an option, yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Will he be able to get a permit during that time period, based on what you just described?
Yes, at your direction. I mean, I think we're very clear on what council wishes are for him to be able to repair it.
Any other questions?
And for the record, because you'll have to vote on that, that meeting is September 3rd, the first
September.
meeting in September.
Okay. Then I will be looking for motions then on item C2 based on our discussions, of whatever nature you may
Well,
have.
I had a question. I mean, if
Sure.
we want to, so we're going to table it until September 3rd.
That
the
is
first meeting.
that's an option.
That is an
yes.
option. If it's only halfway done at that point, we still have to come up with to bring this up again. I mean, should we table it until like a 60-day mark? And if it's either it's done, or if it's not done, then it's, that gives the cutoff date. I don't want to extend this out so long. If we're gonna allow this, I think we need to put a hard stop, like this work needs to be done by a certain time, because I don't want this to, like, well, I did 50%, and I don't want this to drag out either.
No, that's a fair point. And I think this one's different than some of the ones we've seen, just from the standpoint that the gentleman has hired someone. He does have the means to do so. And
It's
so
a much smaller structure.
I think your
it can
point's
get
well
done.
taken that perhaps something along with 30 days may be appropriate, but, that's each of our individual.
Sure.
I mean, I agree with that, but what if it's halfway done in October?
Well,
We're sort of in the same,
Well, I mean,
same
we
spot.
could what us through the end of the year, but if
Right,
it
right.
takes 30 to 45 days is what I'm hearing to fix it, then within that time period, we'll know whether or not there's a sincere
Yeah.
effort to get the thing repaired. So
So what's the first meeting in October?
It should be the second.
That would
or the
be
first.
October 1st.
But if we did September 3rd, and then at that point said, you have 30 days, and there's been work that's done or not work that's done, then we're still not outside of that timeline, right? And then there's the potential to delay it again if we wait until October.
I'm concerned that 30 days may not be enough. I know how construction estimates are. Oh, it's 30 days, and then it ends up being 45 or 60. So at least based on my experience. So that would be something.
I
maybe
mean,
we
once
need
the
to keep in mind.
contractor gets out there and starts working, it'll be very clear that, they want to move forward and fix it. And so I think even though it may not be completed at the next council meeting, or the first council meeting in September, I think that it'll be substantially far enough to know that it will be completed.
That we're heading in the right direction. Okay. Anybody have a motion?
I move we table this item until September 3rd.
I second that.
All right, so I've got a motion and a second to table item C2 until our September 3rd meeting. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Yes, and do I need to put in the motion that a permit can be issued, or did this discussion take care of that?
We'll issue a permit.
Okay.
All right, if no further discussion, then all in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item C2 then is tabled until our first meeting in September, which is on the 3rd. So we're going to, typically we would go to consent agenda now, but because there are some items on the consent agenda that are germane to other items on our agenda, we're going to skip down into city managers' reports, as you might have gathered since Mr. Garza is already at the podium. And we will take up item F2 and item F3. Are we going to do these together?
Yes.
Okay,
We good?
we're good.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to officially present to you and introduce the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. Before I go through it, I do want to acknowledge the finance team who spent a lot of hours working on putting this together. I'm not sure if they're all here, but Laura Gonzalez, Wesley Janecek, Marisa Sendejas, Sarah Vasquez, and Victoria Reyna, if you're here, please stand so we can recognize your work and contribution on the budget. Thank you. Thank you. I like how Laura looks around like, am I the right Laura?
There's a few of us.
Yeah. Okay. Also, you have in front of you in your read files, you have a copy of the transmittal letter that is in essence an executive summary of the proposed budget as well as a physical handout of the PowerPoint presentation. The proposed budget has already been loaded on our website, and it is now active, and anybody, including yourself, can go and access the proposed budget. Similar to where the preliminary budget was located on the home page, simply just go to the annual budgets icon and click through it, and it'll be very easy to find. It's always best, we have found, to present this budget through a combination of talking about what's different from the preliminary budget that we presented you in June, since you've already had some time to go through what was presented in June, but at the same time providing a high-level overview for the benefit of anybody that might be tuning into this meeting for the first time that didn't have an opportunity to listen to the presentation in June. So please bear with me as I will take roughly 30 minutes going through and recapping the budget, proposed budget. Things not clicking through, James. Okay. No, you're good. Thank you. Okay. As is the case with every year, there's always a budget story and some key points that we always keep in mind as we put together the budget. I won't go through each of these, but I'm sure you've seen and have heard that there's definitely some changes in the economy that have just taken place just in the last few days. And as suspected, and as we've talked about for months, there's the possibility of a light recession that might come. And so we're trying to be mindful of that as we proceed with this proposed budget and mindful of it moving forward throughout the fiscal year. And so relative to previous years, certainly fiscal year 25 will be a year that will have even an extra eye and an extra ear on what's going on in our economy, so that potentially if we need to make any adjustments throughout the fiscal year, we're able to do that. Of course, as is the case for every year, we have a balanced budget that we're proposing. And for the 5th year in a row, we will be proposing decreasing the property tax rate. For the 6th year in a row, we will be presenting a compensation pay program for you to consider. And for the 5th year in a row, we're presenting an enhancement to the health plan, which in this particular case would be through the addition of an EPO plan. We will talk through briefly a high-level overview of our capital improvement plan, which has decreased a little bit, not a little bit, a lot, compared to last year, and very minimally hit on our grant programs. So what's changed from the preliminary budget that we presented to you in June? This slide here is intended to show that. On the in the middle, you'll notice that what was presented to you in June was a $193 million proposed budget. It is now literally just shy of $194 million. And what's different and what's been added are the things that literally just these 4 things. And as I mentioned to you in a recent email communication, there aren't any major changes between what the preliminary budget had and what is the proposed. I will hit on the proposed 2025 pay program, which based off of your direction did increase the expense of that by $444,000. I mentioned the introduction of the EPO health plan. There is a cost to that to our health fund, so I'll walk through that. And then there was a couple of cleanup items that we caught between the end of June and now that we've addressed in this official proposed budget. The budget of $194 million, we typically talk about in 3 categories. We talk about our governmental funds, which are the funds that typically hit on anything associated with tax revenue, which of course are of great interest to the public. This is of course where our general fund is located. We also have enterprise funds that are intended to pay for themselves. And these are typically goods and service type of operations. So think of your utility fund, environmental services, things of that sort. And we have internal service funds that helps us just keep up with our ongoing operation and keep up with best practices. Now, where is $194 million coming from. I'll walk through the revenues under the governmental funds category, which is directly associated with tax revenue. I'll walk through some of the enterprise fund revenue, as well as some minimal internal service fund revenue figures. But you'll notice that from these three revenue items, it only hits on $184 million. So if you're wondering where is that $10 million coming from to get us to $194 million, it's coming from those funds as listed on the bottom right hand of this slide. It is common for us and common for any city, quite frankly, to incorporate some excess fund balance into their future budgets. This is a really good opportunity for us to utilize these funds for one-time expenditures or things that we might need for the CIP. This really just helps us, in essence, provide a boost going into the next fiscal year, thanks to this excess fund balance, which could be achieved through a combination of us simply receiving more revenue than what we had anticipated, but also we don't always necessarily expend all of the money that we intend to expend because of vacancies or other things that take place. And so that helps drive this excess funds capacity for us to move over to a new fiscal year. Couple of other graphics to make a couple of points. $194 million budget. You notice on the left-hand side that there's a variety of different funds that I just described. And what's important to note here is that not all funds are created equal, and that we cannot use all funds from each of those funds for anything that we want. There, as you know, there's restrictions that come with some of the enterprise funds, either because of it being associated with an enterprise fund or sometimes a legal related limitation, such as with the hotel occupancy tax dollars. So I just think it's important to understand that not all funds are created equal, and that our total budget is made up of all of these funds, which of course the big ones are our general fund, construction fund, utility fund, et cetera. And speaking of the general fund, you'll notice on the right-hand side, and I'll go through it in more detail in a few minutes, but that's a $61 million general fund that's being proposed for fiscal year 25. On the revenue side, I'll get right into speaking about our property values. And so part of the agenda item that was read was related to the delivery of the certified tax rolls. And so this is the slide where I technically convey to you what our certified tax rolls have come in at for our next year. And they've come in at $5.6 billion, or roughly 3.7% increase compared to the fiscal year 2024 figure. This is slightly better than what we anticipated just a few months ago. We've talked about that in a few different meetings. But now that they're certified, we have greater level of detail and confirmation on what has gone up and what has gone down. And so you notice, for example, that at the very top, it shows residential, it went up 1.1%. You'll see that land went down 18%, commercial industrial went up 10%, agricultural farming went up 21%, special inventory went down 10%, and exempt property went up 20%. I'll also note that at the very bottom of this, we show the TERS captured value, which went up 8%. And you can barely see it in light gray, but we're trying to show you more or less what is that contribution that's being put into this TERS fund. So in fiscal year 24 was roughly $43,000, and we anticipated being around the same for fiscal year 25. I have a couple of graphics to show you related to this. I'll start with the graphic on the left. This left-hand side is reflective of a historical trend in each of those categories that I verbalized. So the blue, for example, is residential. The gray is commercial. The red at the bottom is frozen. And those are the three that I want to hit on for just a minute. It's hard to tell on this graph, but between 2017 and roughly 2020, residential and commercial started trending in opposite directions. And some of you were around when we started to observe this in 2019 and in 2020, and we started asking a lot of questions about why is that the case? Because typically, these are things that go up and down together. Obviously not necessarily to the same extent, but typically both items are directly tied to the state of your local economy, right? And so there were a lot of things that were being asked around that time about why was the case that these evaluations were trending in opposite directions. But you could see how that began to change in 2021 and how we started to see this increase in both, but started to see a relatively similar increase in both in terms of trending in the right direction per se. And so that was good. There was sort of a rectification of this trend that took place. Now, I'll quickly transition to the graphic on the right, because obviously we've all talked about this for several years now, about how we've experienced historic levels of increases in our assessed values, and certainly the data backs that up. And so the graphic on the right shows that between 2020 and 2024, our net taxable appraised value went up 50%. So it literally, our total valuations for the entire city went up 50% just in the span of 5 years. That obviously speaks to just a lot of things that were going on in the market, and just different changes that were taking place in perhaps maybe how some of the assessments were being done. But nonetheless, this is helpful to us as well in understanding why we were able to receive historic levels of new revenue over the last 5 years because of this trend over the course of the last 5 years. Now, one thing that I also want to mention is that sometimes some of these increases are offset by the frozen values, right? And so you notice that this red line is trending down. So what that tells us is that frozen values is trending down, and there's obviously a positive correlation between frozen values and the age of our residents because of the tax exemption for our senior citizens. So this is something to keep an eye on in terms of just the trends that are happening in our community, demographically speaking, because there is a positive correlation between the demographic shifts or lack thereof and how that translates to appraised value and ultimately property tax revenue. I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions that you might have on either the property values breakdown slide or some of these graphics showing historical trends.
Pretty good.
Okay. So moving on, proposed property tax rate. So I alluded to earlier that this would be the 5th year that we've consecutively recommended and you've approved the decrease in the property tax rate. That also goes hand in hand with the increase in valuations, right? It goes without saying that as valuations go up, the property tax rate goes down, and I'll show you a graphic here that shows that a little bit better. But in essence, we're proposing a tax rate of 0.4707, which does equal the voter approval tax rate, and so we are maximizing the revenue that we're getting into our maintenance and operations side of the equation. However, that is due to the shifting of dollars that is taking place from our debt service fund to our general fund. And you can very clearly see that at the bottom. And so again, we're proposing a property tax rate that is equivalent to the voter approval tax rate, but is also a decrease to our current tax rate of 0.0191, so literally just shy of 2 cents, and that's roughly 4%. So that's roughly a 4% decrease in the property tax rate. However, and again, we're still able to receive some new revenue into our maintenance and operations budget, not because of this primarily, but because of the shift that you see at the bottom of money that is going from our debt service fund into our general fund. And as a matter of fact, we're actually projecting that we'll actually receive roughly $4,000 less in property tax revenue, which is the bottom on the right-hand most side of this. And so again, we're actually projecting to receive less property tax revenue in fiscal year 25 once you add debt service rate in general and M&O rate. But again, 3.5% increase in our M&O rate thanks to this shift. I will say that this year we're experiencing one of the cons of SB2. SB2, as you know, puts a cap on how much a community can increase their M&O revenue to 3.5%. Doesn't account for new improvements. But when you shift dollars from your INS rate to your M&O rate, it counts against that 3.5%. And so it was not an option for us this year to consider keeping the same tax rate as an example, because we had reached the 3.5% increase by shifting these dollars on the debt side. And I know that's a topic that is of interest to Councilmember Lofgren and many of you. And as a matter of fact, had a call with TML legislative team today, preparing for the legislative summit next week. And it's an item that we're going to bring up and attempt to bring up as part of the next legislative session, because we do not believe it's fair that cities in essence get penalized for paying debt off early or being smarter about issuing debt because it counts against us when we try and shift this, or when we shift the money from the debt rate to the M&O rate. But anyway, we've also included in this proposed budget a $500,000 bond redemption program. And so we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Again, we're paying off debt early. This creates financial capacity for us moving forward to enhance our CIP even further than what we've discussed already. This is a table that simply shows the decrease over the last 5 years in the property tax rate. We, of course, always get asked, what is the impact on our residents? And because of minimal increases to residential at an aggregate level, what we are showing here is a 2.8% increase to appraised values and the impact that that would have on a resident. And you'll notice that they'll be paying less property taxes if they've experienced a 2.8% increase in their value. Now, obviously, as we've discussed in the past, every individual situation is different. For individuals whose values went up 20, 30, 40%, realistically, they'll be seeing an increase in their property tax bill. But across the board, residential only went up 1.1%, and that's how we go about planning when we do this, right? And so I want to be mindful of the fact of the reality of the situation, that this will impact everybody differently. But we do believe that the majority of our residents will see a decrease in their property tax bill because of this aggregate of only going up 1.1% and it going up a little bit higher on the commercial side. Any questions on that? Okay. On the sales tax side, we are proposing $19 million for fiscal year 25. That is a $700,000 difference compared to what we put in the budget for fiscal year 24 and slightly less than what we're projecting for this fiscal year. This is the item that we will have to keep an eye on as we proceed going into the fiscal year because of things that may or may not be happening in the economy. This would be where we would see it first. And so this is one of those items that I would consider to be somewhat of a revenue risk. And I've mentioned in the past that in order to make our budget work, we would be having to do a few things. And one of those was a revenue risk component. And this is what I'm referring to it, in that we are proposing $19 million in revenue for fiscal year 25, but only anticipating $19.1 million for fiscal year 24. This shows some of the trends and the relationship between sales tax, property tax, and you'll see how in roughly fiscal year 2020, 21, 22, you started to see where they more consistently started to cross each other in terms of the property tax budget with sales tax. And you'll see the tax rate trending down as both the property tax budget and sales tax go up. And so that's really what we'd like to see. A community that is successfully growing would continue to see a property tax rate decrease while at the same time seeing an increase in sales tax revenue as well as property tax revenue. And so, and we can very clearly see, and I guarantee you that 5-6 years from now, we'll still be able to very clearly see that this started happening with us here in Victoria between 21 and 23. And a lot of other places that happened 20 years ago, right? But we're there now. Okay, I'm going to fly through the rest of it. So overall on the expense budget side, I mentioned $194 million, and the fact that a big reason for the big decrease compared to fiscal year 24 was related to CIP. And you know specifically why, because of the public safety building, and that's why that's listed in red here at the bottom. I forgot to mention early on that the way to read these slides is that whatever is in red is what is being removed or no longer present in the proposed budget for fiscal year 25, and what is in blue are the items that have increased or are new for fiscal year 25. Really quickly on the CIP, it is now for fiscal year 25 projected to be $40 million, which is a $57 million difference compared to fiscal year 24. Of course, the big one being the public safety building. This is the 10-year history of our CIP investments. Even if we remove the blue items on this chart, which is related to the public safety headquarters building, you will see that there's been a very intentional increase in our allotment towards residential and thoroughfare streets, which are the brown and the red. I think this is reflective of your priorities and reflective of the feedback that we receive from residents as well to continue to focus on streets, and we certainly are continuing to do that. But this also speaks to our ability to pay off debt early, to have the debt capacity to be able to do some of this. Part of what also helps with our CIP are transfers from the general fund. This is something that also comes up on an annual basis, and so we're simply showing here that in fiscal year 25, we're proposing transferring $4.5 million from the general fund to the CIP to help make that work. I want to transition into the pay program. I won't talk through what we've done in the past, other than to say that beginning in fiscal year 21, we started these enhancements in pay programs. And over the course of fiscal year 21 through fiscal year 24, we've increased our recurring expenditures for personnel-related items by over $5 million. And we're recommending continuing to do that with a pay program that will cost us $1.4 million as gross, but net is less than that thanks to some adjustments that I'll talk through. But really quickly, the pay program is consistent with the recommendation that you provided at the last meeting when Derek was taking the lead with that presentation. So it's a 3% across the board for PD, for fire, for general population. Basically, every employee receives a 3% increase. And employees that are part of the official step plan for police and fire will receive an additional 1% if they're due a step in fiscal year 25. We're also officially increasing the minimum wage to $15. And we are not making any changes to the updated service credit per your direction. The option that you in essence selected and gave the blessing for at the last meeting did account, though, for the adoption of the non-retroactive COLA, which we do plan on bringing that change to here in the next few months, because there is a very minimal savings that'll produce. And you see that at the bottom left, that it would take the rate from 17.96% to 17.24%. I've also mentioned in previous meetings that in order to make this happen, we were going to have to do a few things. One, the revenue risk, which I already spoke about under the sales tax slide. We're going to freeze 10 positions. This budget freezes 10 positions. We are decreasing our one-time expenditures, and some of that is reflective in some of the slides that I'll go through. But on this slide, you could see the baseline adjustment reduction here of $456,000, as well as a TMRS net cost savings associated with the non-retroactive COLA that bring down the cost of this $1.4 million pay program to $846,000. However, we are actually increasing our personnel-related items by $1.4 million, which is inclusive of that $846,000 for the pay program, but also inclusive of an additional $431,000 that we're putting for fire overtime. It's inclusive of an increase to our workman's comp premium of $96,000. It's inclusive of increasing temp pay by $54,000, and those four things combined total $1.43 million. And if you notice on the utility fund part of this, that bar is going to the left, that's because 5 of the positions associated with the 10 frozen are primarily funded through the utility fund. And those 10 positions are all in public works, by the way. Any questions on pay program or personnel? Okay. Briefly hit on the debt service and trends that we're seeing with our debt service fund. This is simply showcasing where we stand and what in essence, our liability and our commitment is for debt service. And so you'll see that in fiscal year 24, our debt service was $6.72 million. And for fiscal year 25, it's 10.28. Keep in mind, we issued bonds earlier this year to go towards the public safety headquarters building. And so this fluctuates depending on whether we issue new debt or not, and how much new debt do we issue. So there's always sort of this volatility with our debt service payment, depending on, of course, what we're paying off and what's being added. However, because we've been paying off debt early, and we haven't been issuing new debt to equal the debt that we've been paying off, we're seeing a decrease overall of the 3.57 million that you see there in red. That's the only red number on the slide. So if you're wondering, how does this make sense? How are we shifting money from the debt rate to the M&O rate, but technically our debt service payment's going up? That doesn't make sense. Well, it's because we're not just maxing the credit card as soon as it's becoming available. And so even though we're issuing new debt, which is increasing our debt service payment, we're not maximizing all the debt that we could in theory be issuing because we're finishing paying it off. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I hope that made sense. Gilbert, does that make sense? Sure, thank you, great answer.
Hey, we answered the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. This shows our debt commitments and gives you a sense of when we finish paying off some debt. To be clear, this doesn't account for any future debt that we might know or anticipate taking. So for example, we've developed a 3-year CIP that will account for some debt over the course of the next few fiscal years. This doesn't account for any of that. We don't incorporate that into any of these projections, so we exactly know what the amount is, what the interest rate's gonna be, what the actual payment's gonna be. Otherwise, it's just be too complicated of a guessing game to put in there. But nonetheless, this gives you a sense of this trend of us and gives you a sense of the timing of when we finish paying off debt. At the December workshop, as we normally do, we'll prepare a more in-depth presentation that Gilbert will give on the latest and greatest as it relates to debt capacity. One of the things to note is that as part of the Public Safety Headquarter building, we are receiving $1 million per year for 10 years from VSTDC. And so this graphic on the right illustrates the impact of that. So really quickly on the general fund, it went up slightly by $1.6 million, and 81% of that $1.6 million is associated with public safety. And so I know that public safety is a big priority for you, and I want to make it clear that certainly our budget is reflective of this priority. Our general fund includes public safety to the tune of 57%, which is roughly $35 million. And again, out of the $1.6 million increase to the general fund, 81% of that is associated with public safety. I won't get into some of the weeds of this, but as you can imagine, the big priority going into fiscal year 25 is associated with personnel. And so we are seeing an increase of 1.17 million in just the general fund on items associated with the pay program, with the proposed pay program. Of course, there are some minimal increases, as you heard department heads speak of in June, related to software expenses that every department is experiencing. There's, of course, some increases in some materials and in some supplies and some other maintenance-related items. I won't go through those, but know that those are included in the proposed budget. One of the ones that I think is important to note is that we are beginning the swapping out of the PD and fire radios to the tune of $435,000. So that'll be a multi-year effort, but something that is needed because the radios need to be replaced. We are projecting an increase of $2 million to the general fund revenues. I've already hit on property taxes and sales taxes, but some of the other revenues that will positively impact our general fund in fiscal year 25 include an increase in our ambulance billing revenue, as well as an increase in the projection for interest income. You're familiar with our 25% reserve with the general fund. And so you notice on the bottom right-hand side where we're projected to be at the end of fiscal year 25, our minimum reserve there is at 15.3 million. We always leave a really good cushion on the general fund side. It's just best practices to do, gives us some flexibility throughout the year, but also more importantly, helps prepare us for that future year, because we never know what revenues are gonna look like for the current year. And so having this cushion helps us be prepared for the following year because of the excess funds that always get utilized for the future year. Just really quickly on the utility fund, $45 million proposed fund for fiscal year 25. You see in the bottom that the bulk of that is related to wastewater and water department services. There's been a lot of things that have come off compared to fiscal year 24 associated with one-time expenditures, CIP projects, things of that sort. You'll notice on the utility fund that some of the personnel-related items are on the right-hand side of this. Again, that goes to my comment earlier that some of the frozen positions are coming from the utility fund, so that's why this is on the right-hand side of the equation. But you notice on the right-hand side, many of the things that I referenced related to professional services, maintenance, supplies, and those increases are accounted for in the utility fund budget. No changes to rates. So I should put that out there. No changes to rates. Anyway, so on the revenue side of the utility fund, we are proposing a slight increase, mainly due to some grant funds and some CIP dollars as well. And ultimately, the fiscal year 25 ending working capital projection for the utility fund is slightly above the minimum by just a little over $1 million. So not as much of a cushion as the general fund. That's intentional. So you'll see a trend here in the next next slides that the utility fund and some of our other enterprise funds, that gap between what we've budgeted and the reserve is not as great as the general fund. That's intentional because our primary core operation is funded through the general fund. And in theory, something were to happen, natural disaster, something else, it's going to be the general fund that's going to absorb the brunt of that, because that's where police and fire is, that's where public works is, that's where some of the core services are. Environmental Services Fund for fiscal year 25, we're proposing a $6.1 million budget. You'll notice that on the blue chart here, that's associated with personnel, some capital expenditures, some transfers to CIP, some minor projects that are included in Darrell's budget. We aren't recommending a transfer to the stabilization fund. Should have mentioned that earlier, but you will notice going through the budget that we removed the transfer to the stabilization fund from all of the different funds for fiscal year 25. There just wasn't enough excess funds that we're projecting here at the end of fiscal year 24 to have a separate or new allocation to the stabilization fund. Stabilization fund still has $2 million in it. We are projecting a slight increase to revenues for the Environmental Services Fund, primarily due to garbage fees, the post-closure fund, and other fees associated with the services that they offer. And as I alluded to earlier, not as much of a gap between the minimum reserve and what we're projecting to be at the end of fiscal year 25. But again, that's intentional. On the health plan side, we've worked really hard to increase this over the last several years. You know it, you've seen this. This is a really good story for us. This is what, quite frankly, is allowing us the ability to be able to take some risk with what we want to do. I mentioned earlier that we will be introducing an EPO plan. At the very right-hand side of this slide, you'll see what we're proposing to do for fiscal year 25 and the cost impact to us, which is $331,000. And that includes some projected increases in claims caused by the creation and the addition of the EPO plan. But it also includes, and we kept, and I think one of you recommended, I think it was Councilmember Kidder that I think asked the question at one of the meetings, are we keeping that $500 contribution for employees? And the answer is yes, and so that is included in fiscal year 25 budget. An employee during open enrollment will have the option to have this one-time $500 contribution go into an HSA, an FSA, or a 457 retirement account. So even though we are not making any changes to the updated service credit with TMRS, we thought it was still a good move to encourage and create opportunities for conversation with employees about diversifying their retirement plan. And so we hope that this achieves that. Now, if you're wondering, why a flexible spending account, the new EPO plan is not considered a high deductible plan, and so you cannot utilize a health savings account for the EPO plan. So for the employees that choose to transition to the EPO plan, their only option would be a flexible spending account, not an HSA. So that's why those would be the three options available for employees during open enrollment. And that's, by the way, not a limitation that is ours. Those are the rules set out by the IRS in how they dictate the rules. And why it's the IRS, I don't know. On the hotel tax fund side, we're actually recommending a decrease to this budget. So for fiscal year 25, it's a little bit over $2 million. and I'll get right into this slide. And so we aren't seeing trends that make us feel confident that we'll be seeing an increase in hotel motel tax revenue. So in fiscal year 24, for example, we budgeted 1.8 million. I'm sorry, we budgeted 1.9 million, and for fiscal year 25, we're only budgeting 1.85 million. And so just a very minimal decrease, but again, we're not seeing anything out there in the market that's telling us that we should see an increase in this. Some of that might be driven by just the market conditions. There's just not a lot of disposable income out there right now for people to travel or do different things. And so we typically see that in the form of our sales tax revenue plateauing, like we've talked about, but we also see it in our hotel tax revenue as well. And really quickly, our hotel tax revenue, I know most people recognize that funds our Convention and Visitors Bureau, but it actually funds more than that. And so this pie chart here on the left is intended to give a high-level overview of all of the different allocations that 1.8 million goes to throughout the year, which does include our Convention and Visitors Bureau. It includes now our Main Street program. It includes that outside agency program that Joel presented at the last meeting. And it includes a variety of different programs throughout the year as well. This is also where our financial commitment to the Texas Zoo comes from. And this is also there, and there's also an allocation of this that goes to our community center. Our community center and our youth sports complex receives some of its money from the hotel occupancy tax dollars because, of course, the correlation with bringing people from out of town for different events that are taking place at the community center and at our youth sports complex. And that's a very common way to go about doing things everywhere. And so that is a really rushed, sort of in a nutshell, overview of the budget. Again, it's a $194 million budget. It's available on our website. Please review that. And I'll end it, for this part of it, I'll end where I began, which is we need to be mindful of the economy and what impact that has on our sales tax revenue and other things. We need to be mindful of just other trends that are happening even with our day-to-day operation, specifically as it relates to our vacancy issue and our retention issue. I do want to make a point that even though our pay program maybe isn't as high as was originally proposed, that does not mean that we're going to stop looking at trying to solve this challenge and this problem of our retention and our recruitment issues. I'll convey to you that we do have a plan to set up some committees internally to sort of take a different approach at coming up with strategies on how we can address that problem. We recognize that while oftentimes money is the deciding factor, we recognize that sometimes it's not always the case. And so we want to go back to the basics and have a more thorough review in every department around what is impacting these retention issues and what is impacting maybe recruitment issues, and really take fiscal year 25 as an opportunity to literally just go back to the basics around potentially solving this problem. And I look forward to working with you collaboratively as well throughout the year on how we can maybe be in a better position to be able to better solve that problem going into fiscal year 26. I just think it's important to verbalize that, because I do not want you or anybody to think that we're going to forget about this challenge that we have, because that is our greatest challenge and it'll continue to be. We're just going to take a different approach on how to solve it during fiscal year 25 to then hopefully bring you different recommendation in fiscal year 26. And lastly, just an overview of the timeline. And so, of course, tonight, delivered the budget. It's available online. Presented you with certified tax roll. On August 20th, we will technically have a budget work session. And so I will make it a point to follow up with each of you from now until then to answer any questions you might have or to prepare anything that you might want to bring up at that August 20th meeting. On September 3rd, which is our regular council meeting, we'll have some official legally required hearings associated with the budget. We'll also have hearing associated with the tax rate, and as well as official vote on the tax rate ordinance. On September 10th, we'll have a special council meeting where we will have another public hearing, as well as have the final votes on the tax rate and the budget. And then, of course, the new budget will go into effect on October 1st. And so with that, happy to answer any questions you might have on anything.
Nope. Well, Thank you for the updated information, and special thanks to the budget team. I know a lot of hard work goes into putting those numbers we see and that plan, and job well done again, and thank you. Appreciate it. So with that then, we will move back up the agenda, and we will go to item D, which is the consent agenda. Ms. Hilbert.
Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on July 16, 2024. Item D2 is a resolution appointing Wesley Janecek, C.P.A. as a representative to perform the no new revenue or effective tax rate in the voter approval or rollback tax rate calculations. Item D3 is a resolution authorizing the publication of the notice of meeting to vote on tax rate. Item D4 is a resolution approving a variance to section 21-138A for a subject property located at 103, 105, and 107 North John Stockbauer to allow for the replat of the property into 2 commercial lots and 1 industrial lot, with the industrial lot being below the minimum lot width requirement. Item D5 is a resolution approving change order number 7 to the Ben Wilson Street Airline Road to U.S. Business 59 project to Main Lane Industries LTD in the amount of $151,786.22 for the total contract amount of $7,564,244.78. Item D6 is a resolution approving a contract with Harrison Waldrop Uherick LLP to perform the city's annual audit for a year ending September 30th, 2024, in an amount not to exceed $53,500. And item D7 is a resolution scheduling public hearings on 2024-2025 budget.
Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. Any motions with respect to the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion to approve in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. So then moving to action items from council, we move to action item E1.
Item E1 is a resolution proposing the tax rate, scheduling public hearings, and scheduling a vote to adopt the tax rate for fiscal year 2024-2025.
I don't have a presentation on this item, but I just wanted to clarify that the dates on these will be September 3rd and September 10th.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Janecek? If not, then I will entertain a motion with respect to E1.
I move we adopt.
Second.
Got a motion, a second on E1. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? E1 passes. Moving then to item E2.
Item E2 is a resolution awarding the bid for an annual supply contract for bulk fuel to new distributing company incorporated in the amount of $1,482,940.45.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to see you all. Hope you all are comfortable. This is going to take a really long time. You might see my hair grow at least on the sides before I'm done. This is for our annual bulk fuel supply contract. We procured this contract using the RFP, request for proposal method. Our estimated volume is 300,000 gallons of gasoline, 200,000 gallons of diesel fuel. Proposals were submitted by 3 vendors. We had New Distributing, Global Montello Group, and Saratoga Rack Marketing. We had a selection committee composed of 5 members of city staff from various departments. We reviewed all the proposals and selected New Distributing as the most qualified vendor for this contract. The selection committee was made up of members from departments in all the internal services, general fund, as well as enterprise funds. Let's see, we have another slide here. Thanks to Derek for recommending that we make this little fuel history slide. What it has is three data points. We have the last 5 years of history and then our projection for 2025 based on the bid that we received. The yellow bar indicates our total fuel costs for each year. The green bar indicates our total volume consumed for each of those years. And the line going across the top correlates to the numbers on the right-hand side of the graph, which are the retail fuel costs for averages for those years. That cost came from the Energy Information Administration. So that'll just give you a little bit of history. 2022 was our highest year. The average price that year, I think, was a little over $4 a gallon for gasoline. So you can kind of see how our cost relates to the trend in retail price. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions?
I just want to acknowledge the color scheme. Thank you.
Do you like that?
Yeah, thank you.
I liked it too. It's kind of.
I had a Trapper Keeper those colors, I think.
I think
You were in
there
the
was-
80s, right?
There was a comment at a meeting this morning that you've hit upon the one item that's not at an all-time high. So
Great.
thanks to 2022 is the only reason. So,
Perfect. Yes.
So thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
So then with that, then I'll entertain motions with respect to item E2.
That's not in the budget, is it?
We don't have to amend the budget now, right? Yeah. So any motions with respect to item E2?
Move to adopt E2.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item E2 passes
Thank you very much.
with minimal property damage, thankfully. Moving on then, item E3.
Item E3 is a resolution authorizing a tax sale of property located at 1004 South Navarro Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a very brief presentation, and then Lineberger attorney will join me for this presentation, Mr. Michael Carrillo. So Mayor and Council, as you can see from this map to your left, we have numerous vacant lots with code enforcement or code violation liens, specifically weedy lots and demolition liens. So to address this problem, the Victoria Housing Finance Corporation is essentially implementing an infill lot acquisition and development program. And the goal is very simple. It is to acquire these unproductive lots and transfer them to private builders to build affordable workforce housing, also to help revitalize our neighborhoods, and also increase our property tax. So the HFC plans to acquire these properties in three ways. One is through the sheriff's sale of tax delinquent properties, the foreclosure auction. So we would go and place a bid on the properties to acquire them. Number two is donations in lieu of paying code enforcement liens. So we have many properties, again, that have code enforcement liens, so the property owner could donate the property to the HFC in exchange for the city waiving the liens. And then finally, direct purchase. So you can see on the map, we have many of those vacant lots. So the issue here is that 1004 South Navarro Street has been tax delinquent for quite some time. This property is located on the south side near Gross Elementary. So the property finally went to the sheriff's sale for auction on June 4th, but the property was not sold. No one put a bid on the property, so it was struck off. That means that the ownership reverted back to the county as the trustee. So the HFC, Housing Finance Corporation, would like to acquire this property for affordable workforce housing. So at the July 12th meeting, the HFC authorized staff to submit a private bid of $15,000 for the property and asked Lineberger, the attorney that processes the delinquent tax properties, to process the bid and submit it to the taxing entities for approval. So before I go further, I would like to ask Mr. Michael Carrillo to come forward and explain the process of how to get approval from the taxing entities as we go forward. So Michael.
Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Carrillo. I'm with the Lineberger Law Firm. We collect the delinquent taxes on behalf of the city and all the other taxing entities in Victoria County. We've been doing that since 2000. We've been in business, we've been collecting delinquent taxes since 1976. And we are located here in the O'Connor Building, a couple of blocks away. As Mike said, so Properties like this, this used to be an old lodge before, a Boaz Lodge. It fell out of charter, wasn't being used anymore, so their tax exempt status expired. It started accruing taxes. We filed a lawsuit to collect those delinquent taxes on behalf of the taxing entities. And the way the tax foreclosure works is we file a suit. Once they become delinquent, we have to get everybody served that has an interest in it. Then we put it up for a trial, actually. And if they still don't pay, we take a judgment. They still don't pay, we put it up for foreclosure, which we do online tax sales here in Victoria. Nobody purchased it at that point. So what happens now is it becomes every taxing entity becomes a trustee. So Victoria, the city of Victoria has just as much right as the school, the county, the college. Nobody bought it for the opening bid. The opening bid usually consists of, it's either two things. It's either the value of the property or the taxes plus the costs of the sale, of conducting the whole thing. So on this instance, what was due was $26,000. Oh, there you go. So what was due, this was on the June 4th sale. Nobody put in a bid. The opening bid was $26,000. That was over what the Housing Finance Corporation was willing to pay since they were capped. So if somebody wants to put in a bid or a corporation wants to put in a bid and it is for less than the amount, then all of the entities have to approve it, okay? And so this is a breakdown of what the bid that we're presenting to you today. The amount of the bid is $15,000. The costs of providing that sale is $1,867. That includes court costs, sheriff's fees, publication fees, title fees to get make sure that the title is correct, that we have everybody included. You can see there that the current value is $76,000. That is very high. That's, we talked about that has gone up very much, but of course that is what the appraisal district provided. Your bid is going to be about, the bid from the Victoria Housing Finance Corporation is about 52.5% of what is owed. On the next slide, you will, if you do approve this, we will move on to the other entities. I will go on your behalf and present this. So you will the City of Victoria is owed almost $6,800. So you'll probably get about half of that back once it's paid. You'll get about half of that back, $3,300 in tax revenue back. And then, of course, at that point, once you all get a builder and there's an improvement on it, then obviously the tax value is going to go higher and the revenue will be increased. If you do pass today, this would be the resolution that we have submitted. Every entity would get a resolution, would sign one similar to this. So I'm open to any questions if you have any questions.
Any questions? All right, I think we understand the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So Mayor and Council, so once Lineberger receives approval from all of the taxing entities, the HFC will maintain the lot, issue a request for builders, select a private builder, and then transfer the lot or sell the lot to a builder to build 2 single-family homes on the site. As you can see on the site, we could have 2 houses on this property, and it's about 0.2 acres, so it's fairly large. So with that said, Mayor and Council, staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Etienne. Any other questions anyone may have? With that, then, I will entertain a motion with respect to item E3.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this item.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item E3 is approved. Moving on then to item E4.
Item E4 is a resolution approving a waiver of code enforcement liens at 405 West Juan Lynn Street to facilitate development of affordable workforce housing.
Mr. Etienne, you're still at the plate.
I am still here. So Mayor and Council, so as part of the infill lot and acquisition program that I just talked about, so 405 West One Lynn was donated to the HFC for affordable workforce housing in lieu of paying $21,998 in code enforcement violation liens. That's demolition and weedy lot. There used to be a house on the site, on the property. It caught on fire, and the city demolished it. So there is that demolition lien. So the property is vacant at the moment. The size you can see is 0.19 acres. The code enforcement lien is $998, as I mentioned, $21,998. And the VCAT value is $43,600. So the HFC would like to acquire this property for affordable workforce housing. But in order to do that, we would like City Council to waive the code enforcement liens before we go forward. So again, at the July 12th meeting of the HFC, the board did authorize staff to ask council to consider waiving the code enforcement liens to facilitate development of affordable housing. So again, if City Council agrees to waive the liens, the HFC will maintain the lot, we'll cut the grass and so forth. We'll issue a request for builders, select a builder, and then sell the lot or transfer it to a developer to build one single-family home for low to moderate income persons. So staff and the HFC board recommends approval of this item, and I would like to thank the HFC board members, President Ricky De La Garza, Vice President Jan Scott, and Dr. Andrew Young as the treasurer. So thank you very much. So this is the beginning, hopefully, of us acquiring more of those vacant, blighted lots that are scattered throughout the city so we can build housing on those vacant lots.
Any questions? All right. With that then, I will entertain a motion as to item E4.
Move to adopt E4.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item E4 passes. So then back to city manager's reports. I believe we have one more, Mr. Garza?
Yes, sir, we do. And this is the last item for this evening. We will not have an executive session. So telling you that now. Danielle will be distributing, or somebody.
Yes, Ms. Williams is distributing, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Danielle is passing out, or has delivered this evening, an example of a draft of an ordinance, as well as some policies and procedures and implementation processes for the Unified Special Events Ordinance that we are working on collectively with a healthy handful of departments within the city. I just reiterate, this is a working draft. We just want to kind of give you an overview of the direction we're headed with this process.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Lisa Wube, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'm here today to present the proposed Unified Special Events Ordinance with my teammate, Kate Garcia, Main Street Manager. Today's presentation, we are going to walk through goals, highlights of the existing and proposed ordinance update, as well as an introduction to the CIRC. We're calling that the CIRC, which is the Special Events Review Committee, in addition to the application process and the implementation timeline. So our goal is to create a standardized one-stop shop special event permit process for event organizers. We want to improve the efficiency for our customers and staff, the experience overall, as well as streamlining the review process. So here are some highlights of the existing ordinance. So first, it only applied to the Parks and Recreation Department, and it did not include the Victoria Main Street program. With the addition of the De Leon Plaza, one of downtown's greatest assets, we want to now improve we want to also include this so our special event reach will increase. The customer had to make multiple stops to multiple departments to secure these required permits. And the submission process was only available through one channel, a paper copy. So now we're going to hear a little bit about the new process.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So looking into the future, we want to enhance the customer experience as well as increase the efficiency for staff. As I had mentioned a couple of months ago in the Main Street Program's 2023 annual report, we saw events including private events within bars and restaurants that included major events that were hosted at De Leon Plaza teetering on the 800 plus mark. And so we're really looking at maximizing staff's time and enhancing the customer's experience. So the highlights of the proposed ordinance include a more clear definition of what a special event actually is, and those are detailed in the bullet marks in the draft ordinance that we're currently working on, such as street blocking, if it alters the flow of general traffic, et cetera. And it establishes an ordinance that is supported by a unified special events permit application policy and procedure. As Lisa had mentioned, we're working together as we have the outdoor facilities that will host most of these events. So we will have one unified policy, procedure, and permit application process, regardless if it's hosted at Riverside Special Events Area, De Leon Plaza, within the Entertainment District, et cetera. And it promotes an enforceable regulation for the review committee and other processes and procedures such as obtaining or failure to obtain the permit. And along with this process, there are a few housekeeping items as detailed above. We have to make amendments to just a few, these are minor amendments, to just a few of the existing ordinances. And as Lisa mentioned, we wanted to detail who this healthy handful of departments are. She mentioned we are calling this the Special Events Review Committee. It will operate in much of the way that a DRT meeting, a design review team meeting, operates for the development process. So we'll have monthly meetings. We'll take a month of applications. We'll review those at a monthly meeting for the internal departments that you see listed on this slide. And then we'll roll directly into an external meeting in which the event organizers are invited to make sure that all of the staff's questions are answered. We have identified all of the permits that are required, all of the fees that will be required, et cetera. So just kind of a really high-level overview of what that application process looks like. The event organizer will submit, step one, submit your application no less than 90 days prior to the event date, and that can be online. We're going to really stress the online submission in order to help streamline the process. But we will accept on paper copy if there is not a possibility of the applicant submitting it through digital means. Step two, the SERC, the Special Events Review Committee, will review the application no less than 60 days prior to the event, and then we invite that event organizer, if that application is deemed complete and does meet all the requirements of a special event, they are invited no less than 30 days prior to their event date for a review session, and then no less than 30 days prior to their event date, they will need to pay all of their required fees and obtain their required permits. Kind of a high-level implementation timeline. This is today's. First step is presenting kind of an outlook of where we're headed with this process, in hopes to present this as a first reading to council on August 20th, and then again for the second and third reading at the September 3rd meeting, and with hopes to implement and make it effective October 1. And with that, we will take questions if there are any.
I have a question real quick.
Yes, sir.
Could you back up just a couple of slides there? So on step 3, it says the event organizer is invited to present the event to CERC. Is it a requirement that they actually meet with the committee
Yes,
in
sir.
order
We
to
are
get the
planning
permit?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So since this is being presented to us by Main Street and Parks and Rec, who takes the application? Who's the lead to process it?
So we do in let's see, that is beginning on your second page. We have definitions that includes, let's see, I think it's page 3 of your packet, that it includes a special event coordinator. So we will identify one point person that will communicate with the CERC, the committee, as well as the applicant. So we will have one point of contact, and then they will be responsible for communicating with city staff and making sure the appropriate departments are present at each month's meeting.
And is one individual or department tasked with monitoring the incoming applications to set the agenda for that meeting? And if
Yes,
so,
sir.
who is that?
That would be the coordinator.
Okay.
They would intake the applications, that would be one point person, and then they would communicate with
Okay,
with
so the
staff.
special event coordinator is TBD at this point. Somebody's
Yes,
going to
sir.
be appointed to that.
Correct.
Okay, now I get it. Okay. Any other questions at this point? I'm certain that once we go through this and look at it more and the ordinance comes up, then we'll walk through that a little further. But certainly, I think this is a great idea from the standpoint that I know that there's been some confusion about going to different departments and what needed to be done and that sort of thing. And I applaud the effort and look forward to having a more streamlined approach. I think it will really help not only the city, but I think it'll help folks that are trying to host the events quite a bit. So I think it's a great idea. All right, anything else? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, then, I believe we have completed the agenda, and we were promised no executive session earlier, correct?
Nope.
All right, well, then, we are adjourned at 6:50.